ATN International News. First, the headlines. Junta foil escape attempt by President Bazoum family.
Israeli airstrike kills Hamas security chief family members.
North Korean weapons likely used by Hamas on Israel.
United States journalist detained in Kazan on espionage charges.
Newspaper fires cartoonists for not caricaturing Israel PM Netanyahu.
Diplomats recall from India as diplomatic tension escalates.
And now to the rest of our stories. Niger's ruling junta said late Thursday it had thwarted an overnight attempt by deposed President Mohamed Bazoum to escape detention with his family nearly 3 months after he was detained in the wake of a military coup. In a communique, Colonel Maj Amado Abdurrahman said that Bazoum tried to reach a waiting vehicle at around 3 a.m. that to the outskirts of the capital, 2 cooks and his security personnel. From there, they were to be flown to Nigeria aboard 2 helicopters belonging to a foreign power, Abdurrahman said. This plan to destabilize our country was thwarted. Abdurrahman said, adding that the main perpetrators had been arrested and an investigation has already been opened by the public prosecutor. Bazoum has been under house arrest with his wife and son since being ousted in July and has refused to resign. The junta had cut off his electricity and water.
An Israeli airstrike on Thursday killed Jihad Mason, the head of Hamas-led national security forces in Palestine. Mason was killed along with several other family members at his house, quoting a Hamas-affiliated news agency. A Palestine-affiliated news organization, Jerusalem News Network, reported that the attack was leveled in Gaza's Sheikh Radwan neighborhood. The organization said in a post on X, formerly Twitter, Major General Jihad Mason, commander of the Palestinian National Security Forces in the Gaza Strip, and his family were killed by the bombing of his house inside the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood. The war, which has entered day 13, had displaced over 1 million Palestinians, which is nearly half of Gaza's population. Nearly 5,000 people have died on both sides and thousands have been injured. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Wednesday that limited humanitarian aid will be allowed into Gaza after a request from United States President Joe Biden.
UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak on Thursday arrived in Israel to show solidarity and support with Israel Lviv a day after US President Joe Biden met Israel's top leadership in the war-shed country. Sunak visited the families of those who were killed or being held hostage by the Hamas militants to have a child taken from unbearable agony. Working with our partners, we're determined to secure the release of the hostages taken by Hamas terrorists, he said in a post on X after landing at Ben Gurion Airport near Tel Aviv. Sunak said, above all, I'm here to express my solidarity with the Israel people. You have suffered an unspeakable, horrific act of terrorism, and I want you to know that the United Kingdom and I stand with you. According to his office, Sunak will will meet with Israeli counterpart Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel President Isaac Herzog, and will share his condolences for the loss of life in Israel and Gaza as a result of the October 7 attack on Israel.
A U.S. Navy warship on Thursday shot down multiple drones and 3 cruise missiles that were fired from Yemen and heading potentially towards Israel. Out the missiles and more than a dozen drones, said Brig General Pat Ryder, the Pentagon press secretary. There were no casualties, but this may be ongoing, he said. The flurry of military activity came amid escalating tensions in the region over the hospital explosion in Gaza and a spate of recent drone attacks on United States bases in the Middle East. At least 2 drones targeted Al-Tanf, a United States garrison in southern Syria.
Hamas fighters likely fired North Korean weapons during the October 7 assault on Israel, a militant video and weapons seized by Israel show. Despite Pyongyang's denials that it arms the militant group. South Korean officials, 2 experts on North Korean arms, and an Associated Press analysis of weapons captured on the battlefield by Israel point towards Hamas using Pyongyang's denials that it arms the militant groups. South-sanctioned battered North Korea uses as a way to fund its own conventional and nuclear weapons programs. Rocket-propelled grenade launchers fire a single warhead and can be quickly reloaded, making them valuable weapons for guerrilla forces in running skirmishes with heavy vehicles. The F-7 has been documented in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and the Gaza Strip, said N.R. Jensen Jones, a weapons expert who works as a director of the consultancy Armament Research Services. The North Korea detained in Russia, her employer said, the second such case since the war in Ukraine started. Also Kumsheva, a dual Russian-American reporter with Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, was detained in the southwest Russian city of Kazan on Wednesday while awaiting the return of her passports. Her employer said Thursday in a statement. RFE-RL said because of security concerns due to violence in the Middle East. The government said border controls will be introduced on Saturday and last for at least 10 days. Italy on Wednesday said it will suspend an open border agreement with Slovenia also on Saturday and for 10 days. The decisions reflect increasing security concerns in Europe because of the war between Israel and Hamas. European Union interior ministers on Thursday debated how to manage the impact of the war on the 27-nation bloc as Home Affairs Commissioner Eva Johnson said in Luxembourg that the Commission is looking into the issue of internal border checks, which she described as one of the challenges of the Schengen area. Slovenia's government cited heightened its
Sudan in 2020. In his first appearance at the ICC that same year, he said the charges against him were untrue. He faces a maximum sentence of life imprisonment to be convicted.
The International Criminal Court announced Thursday it was dropping about 20 child government ministers from the Central African Republic, citing a lack of evidence and available witnesses. Karim Khan, the chief prosecutor at a court based in The Hague in the Netherlands, issued a statement saying he was withdrawing all charges against Maxim Geoffrey Eli Mokum Gawaka because there was no longer any reasonable prospect of conviction at trial. Malcolm, 44, was released soon after the court made the announcement. He was accused of coordinating operation of the Anti-Balaka, a mainly Christian group that fought against the predominantly Muslim Saleka rebel group. The fighting The fighting left thousands dead and displaced hundreds of thousands in 2013 and 2014. During a pre-trial hearing in August, Mokum's defense team told judges that prosecutors had already uncovered evidence that could exonerate Mokum even before his arrest in neighboring Chad in 2022. Mokum is the fourth suspect from the long-running conflict in the mineral-rich but impoverished nation to appear before judges at the global court. Violence has plagued the Central African Republic since 2013, when Seleka rebels forced then-President Francis Bozier from office. Militias known as Anti-Baleka later fought back, also targeting civilians and sending most of the Muslim residents of the capital, Bangui, fleeing in fear.
Italy violated the human rights of residents living in and around Naples by failing to manage a 15-year garbage and pollution crisis that contributed to higher mortality rates from cancer in the area, the European Court of Human Rights ruled. The preliminary verdict announced Thursday from the Strasbourg-based court is the second major Campania region adversely affected residents' personal well-being. Residents of the area have long complained about adverse health effects from the dumping, which has poisoned the underground wells irrigating the farmland that provides vegetables. Waste is commonly burned, spewing toxic fumes for kilometers. Authorities say at least some of the contamination is due to the local Camorra mob's multi-billion-dollar racket in disposing of hazardous waste. The Strasbourg court didn't identify who was behind the solid waste crisis under study in Caserta and San Nicola, La Strada, and the pollution at the landfill site. The court found that Italy violated residents' rights during a state of emergency over the garbage crisis from 1994 to 2000 by failing to take measures.
And colleagues mourned and celebrated the life of a French language teacher who was stabbed to death in a school attack blamed on a suspected Islamic extremist. They remembered Dominique Bernard at his funeral service Thursday as a sensitive, crowd-shy man who loved literature, art, and wife. Brigitte were among mourners at the cathedral in Arras, the northern French town where Bernard taught at the Gambetta Carrot School. While flowers adorned the coffin, a crowd with some people clutching with flowers also watched the service on a giant screen in an Arras square. Bernard was 57. His wife, Isabel, described her husband as a great lover of literature, music, art, cinema, and the raking evening light, who wasn't fond of computers, crowds, and social networks, didn't have a cell phone, and didn't like the noise and furor of the world. He deeply loved his daughters, his mother and his sister. We loved one another, she said. His killing last Friday shocked France and prompted heightened security at schools and other sites. 3 other people were injured in the attack. The alleged attacker was arrested, identified by prosecutors as Mohammed M. He remains in detention and is under formal investigation for terror-related murder, attempted murder, and other charges. France's anti-terror prosecutor said the suspect declared allegiance to the Islamic State group.
Steve Bell's cartoons have been an important part of The Guardian over the past 40 years. We thank him and we wish him all the best, publisher Guardian News and Media said in a statement on Thursday. Bell has contributed to The Guardian since 1983. Several of his hundreds of cartoons over the years have been accused of including anti-Jewish stereotypes. The latest cartoon posted by Bell on social media shows Netanyahu holding a scalpel and preparing to cut a Gaza-shaped incision in his abdomen, with the caption, "Residents of Gaza, get out now." I don't promote harmful anti-Semitic stereotypes. Never have I done such a thing. I would not dream of doing such a thing, the publication quoted him as saying. Britain has a long tradition of cartoons showing politicians in exaggerated and grotesque form. Bell has created some of the most indelible caricatures of recent British leaders, portraying former Prime Minister John Major wearing underpants over his trousers, Tony Blair with a demonic oversized eye, and David Cameron with a condom over his head.
voters are casting ballots Thursday in two special elections in England, and that could add more misery to the beleaguered governing Conservative Party as it prepares to fight a national election next year. The Conservatives won both Tamworth in central England and Bedfordshire, north of London, by large margins during the last national election in 2019. Both constituencies' lawmakers resigned under a cloud. Tamworth legislator Chris Pincher quit after Parliament's standards watchdog recommended he be suspended for completely inappropriate behavior after groping two men at a London private members club. Then Prime Minister Boris Johnson's reluctance to sanction Pincher when the allegations emerged helped trigger Johnson's ouster at the hands of his own party last year. Bedfordshire Member of Parliament Nadine Dorries resigned over the treatment of Johnson and her failure to be appointed to Parliament's upper chamber, the House of Lords. Dorries is a strong ally of Johnson, who has blamed Prime Minister Rishi Sunak for helping to topple the former leader. The main opposition Labour Party and the smaller Liberal Democrats hope to win the seats, but have tried to manage expectations, noting that the Conservatives won substantial majorities in 2019. Labour has called both districts super safe Tory seats. Losing either one would add to pressure on the governing party, which has lost several by-elections since Sunak took office just under a year ago. He replaced Liz Truss, who quit in October 2022 after the plan for unfunded tax cuts sent financial markets into turmoil and rocketed the economy.
Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg was charged by the UK police with a public order offence after she was arrested with other activists during a protest outside a London hotel at an event dubbed as Oscars of Oil. Thunberg, 20, was charged along with 28 other protesters in relation to Tuesday's protest, the press reported. Becoming the face of young climate activists, Thunberg began holding weekly protests outside the Swedish parliament in 2018. Thunberg was protesting to stop delegates from entering a conference of oil and gas industry leaders hosted by the Energy Intelligence Forum at the Intercontinental London Park Lane in Mayfair. Video showed Thunberg being taken away in a police van as she joined protests, with the crowd blocking the entrance of the hotel and chanting "Oily money out." Several police officers had to shove protesters aside to create a way for delegates to enter. The United Kingdom police said that Thunberg and other protesters failed to comply with conditions and the charges were imposed in order to prevent serious disruption to the community hotel and guests.
Hundreds of people were being evacuated from their homes and schools closed in parts of Scotland on Thursday, as much of northern Europe braced for stormy weather, heavy rain and gale force winds from the east. The UK's weather forecaster, the Met Office, issued a red alert, the highest level of weather warning for parts of Scotland, predicting exceptional rainfall Thursday and Friday that is expected to cause extensive flooding and danger to life from fast-flowing or deep flood water. The last red alert in UK was issued in 2020. Forecasters say the storm, named Babel by UK officials, could bring more than a month's worth of rain in the worst affected regions in Scotland. Babel already brought floods and swollen rivers that swamped several towns and villages in Ireland, with some areas remaining underwater and without power Thursday. Soldiers helped with evacuation measures in the town of Middleton in County Cork, where more than 100 properties were flooded. In the town of Brechin, near Scotland's eastern coast, officials told residents of about 400 houses to evacuate to local rest centers. Schools, recreation centers, and vaccination hubs in the area were closed and will remain shut on Friday. In Denmark, residents scrambled to place sandbags along exposed areas. In Athens, on the central island of of Funen, emergency services deployed huge rubber tubes in the harbor to counter rising water levels. Press reported Southern Denmark police urged people along the east coast to leave exposed areas if the weather predictions remain, saying cottages, harbors, and other places could be flooded.
Canada's foreign minister said Thursday that the country has recalled 41 of its diplomats from India after the Indian government said it will revoke their diplomatic immunity, escalating a spat over the slaying of 6 separatists in Canada. The moves come after Canada's allegations that India may have been involved in the June killing of Canadian citizen Hardeep Singh Nijjar in suburban Vancouver. India has accused Canada of harboring separatists and terrorists, but dismissed the allegation of its involvement in the killing as absurd. And it has taken diplomatic steps to express its anger over the accusation. Foreign Minister Melanie Joly said Thursday that 41 of Canada's 62 diplomats in India have been removed, along with their dependents. Joly said exceptions have been made for 21 Canadian diplomats who will remain in India. 41 Canadian diplomats and their 42 dependents were in danger of having their immunity stripped on an arbitrary date, and this would put their personal safety at risk, Joly said. Our diplomats and their family have now left. India's Ministry of External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi had previously called for a reduction in Canadian diplomats in India, saying they outnumbered India's staffing in Canada. Canadian's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said last month that there were credible allegations of Indian involvement in the slaying of Nijjar, a 45-year-old Sikh leader who was killed by masked gunmen in June in Surrey, outside Vancouver. For years, India had said that Nijjar, a Canadian citizen born in India, had links to terrorism, an allegation Nijjar denied. India had also cancelled visas for Canadians, and Canada has not retaliated for that. India previously expelled a senior Canadian diplomat after Canada expelled a senior Indian diplomat.
U.S. lawmaker Rashida Tlaib has accused the Joe Biden administration of funding a genocide against Palestinians and puts the onus on Israeli military for bombing a hospital in Gaza. Rep. Tlaib, the sole Palestinian American in the U.S. Congress, while addressing a pro-Palestine rally on the Capitol Hill on Wednesday, broke down into tears and called for a ceasefire in the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. Israel just bombed the Baptist hospital, killing 500 Palestinians, doctors, children, patients. Just like that, Tlaib tweeted on X platform. Ilhan also called for a ceasefire in a tweet on Tuesday and stated that the IDF reportedly blowing up the hospital is horrific. The remarks by the Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib have shown the continuing fault lines within the Democratic Party on Israel, with the two representatives standing out in criticizing Israel's government as other Democrats have said. They do not believe Israel was responsible for the explosion, press reported. Republican lawmakers have also called on the two lawmakers to apologize and retract their tweets. Rep. Mike Lawler on Wednesday that Tlaib and others should apologize for their remarks about the hospital explosion. It is appalling and unacceptable that Democrats in Congress partook in Hamas' misinformation campaign. Rep. Tlaib and her radical colleagues helped spread this insidious lie far and wide without remorse, and as this morning have yet to take down their post, issue an apology or place blame on the actual perpetrators with same conviction, Lawyer wrote.
California government Gavin Newsom is planning a one-day visit to Israel this week to meet people affected by the country's war with Hamas, stopping over en route to China, where he will discuss policies to curb global warming. The Democratic governor is set to arrive Friday in Israel with plans to depart later that same day for Hong Kong. His office didn't immediately answer questions about his schedule and activities in Israel. "I'm on my way to Israel," Newsom confirmed in a message posted on X, formerly known as Twitter. "I will be meeting with those impacted by the horrific terrorist attacks and offering California support." California is also sending medical supplies to the region, including provisions intended for the Gaza Strip, his office said. California is home to the largest population of Arab Americans in the United States, according to the Arab American Institute. It also has the second largest populations of Jews in the United States, according to the American Jewish Population Project at Brandeis University. Thousands of information technology workers contracting with the United States company have for years secretly sent millions of dollars of their wages to North Korea for use in its ballistic missile program, FBI and Department of Justice officials said. The Justice Department said Wednesday that IT workers dispatched and contracted by North Korea to work remotely with companies in St. Louis and elsewhere in the United States have been using false identities to get the jobs. The money they earned was funneled to the North Korean weapons program, FBI leaders said at a news conference in St. Louis. Court documents allege that North Korea's government dispatched thousands of skilled IT workers to live primarily in China and Russia with the goal of deceiving businesses from the United States and elsewhere into hiring them as freelance remote employees. The workers used various techniques to make it look like they were working in the United States, including paying Americans to use their home Wi-Fi connections, and Jay Greenberg, special agent in charge of the St. Louis FBI office. Greenberg said any company that hired freelance IT workers more than likely hired someone participating in the scheme. An FBI spokeswoman said Thursday that the North Korean contracted with companies across the United States and in some other countries. The IT workers generated millions of dollars a year in their wages to benefit North Korea's weapons program. In some instances, the North Korean workers also infiltrated computer networks and stole information from the companies that hired them, the Justice Department said. They also maintained access for future hacking and extortion schemes, the agency said. Officials didn't name the companies that unknowingly hired the North Korean workers, said when the practice began, or elaborate on how investigators became aware of it. But federal authorities have been aware of the scheme for some time.
In response to Venezuela's government and a faction of its opposition formally agreeing to work together to reach a series of basic conditions for the next presidential election, the U.S. agreed Wednesday to temporarily suspend some sanctions on the country's oil, gas, and gold sectors. Tuesday's agreement between President Nicolas Maduro's administration and the Unitary Platform came just days before the opposition holds a primary to pick its candidate for the 2024 presidential election. The U.S. Treasury issued a 6-month general license that would temporarily authorize transactions involving Venezuela's oil and gas sector, and another that authorizes dealings with Minervan, the state-owned gold mining company, and it removed the secondary trading ban on certain Venezuelan sovereign bonds. The ban on tracing in the primary Venezuelan bond market remains in place. Treasury says Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. and the international community will closely follow implementation of the electoral roadmap, and the U.S. government will take action if commitments under the electoral roadmap and with respect to political prisoners are not met. The new family reunification parole process will soon allow certain immigrants from Ecuador with relatives in the U.S. to be considered for humanitarian entry. The Department of Homeland Security announced Wednesday qualified Ecuadorians must have a relative in the U.S. who is an American citizen or a permanent resident who can sponsor them for an immigrant visa. The family reunification parole process will be granted in a case-by-case basis upon demonstration of urgent humanitarian reasons or significant public benefit, according to DHS. In a statement, the department said the move is part of a larger commitment from President Joe Biden's administration to expand legal immigration pathways and reduce illegal crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border. This is the first time the Biden administration has created a parole process for Ecuadorians who have recently arrived at the southern border in large numbers, up from 3,700 in August, coincides with an escalation in drug violence in the country over the past 3